Everybody in here for the screen versus tmux talk? Great. Before going into this talk, I've got to ask a question that sometimes is a formality, but I really don't consider it a formality in this case. So, everybody's arm should go up at some point because the questions will cover everybody. Who in here has used Screen? Okay. Who in here has used tmux? Who in here has used neither? Okay. So, I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about the virtues of Screen and tmux. That's what that tells me, among other things. So, good. Terminal multiplexing for the one guy. It lets you run. It lets you run it in one terminal. You can do lots of terminals, and that's a great thing. For people who like to keyboard a lot, this is the way to go. You can detach from a running session. These virtues here apply to both Screen and tmux. Having scrollback buffer on the server is very nice. If you reattach to it later, it's still there. You can be alerted to changes in the other windows. You can cope with flaky links because whatever you were doing is not interrupted. You can share your terminal with other people, but it's a very low bandwidth thing compared to GUI desktop sharing. You can actually log what's going on in the terminal while you do it. You can configure a status line. And this is just a brief war story. I take this stuff for granted like I'm sure most of you do, but last week we did a mail server migration, and there were 3 of us who were in a shared screen session on a server, and there were at all times at least those 6 windows open and then several others coming and going. The 3 of us could come and go as we pleased, and being able to watch different logs. This one was for SE Linux denials. And to be able to label these windows and know what we're doing and not be constantly using a mouse to go open a window and close it, not losing our place when one of us left for a few hours to come back. We take this stuff for granted, but it's really awesome. And just that one day when we were doing this migration would have been agony without Screen or tmux. Either one would have worked fine. But I just want to remind everybody of that and just say, if you're not using Screen or tmux regularly, if it's not there all the time when you do things, you're probably doing it wrong. It's hard. It took me a while to get into it because this is a difficult thing actually to come talk about because you can't see most of the magic. But if you're not using it already, do. It's good for pair programming too. A lot of people think you need to be sitting next to each other, but with a shared screen or tmux session and some kind of headset so that your shoulders are all relaxed, you're not trying to hold a phone like this while you type, you can do pair programming pretty well this way, assuming you're doing it in a terminal, which I do. Screen is venerable. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not really broken, and regardless of what I'll say today about Screen and tmux, if Screen works for you and you're happy with it, at the moment, I don't really see any reason to be in a big hurry to move. Indeed, I wasn't. But Screen hasn't really progressed a lot in recent years. And according to people who've looked at it, it's hard to get patches in there. The code is fairly messy. But let's talk about tmux first. It is much easier to search for the name tmux in Google. That is undeniable. Searching for Screen is an exercise in frustration. And saying GNU Screen doesn't help a lot because lots of the people talking about it don't say GNU Screen. tmux draws the screen faster. That's a subjective observation, but it feels that way to me. More objectively, if you open 100 windows in Screen, with most of them being empty, on this machine, it takes 370 megabytes, and in tmux, it really doesn't increase much beyond the initial startup size, which is worth something. tmux will show you it'll automatically update the titles of windows with the name of the command you last ran, unless you assign a custom name to the window. And that's kind of convenient because Screen, by default, will just name everything bash or ZSH or whatever your shell is, unless you rename it. But in tmux, it might say vim, it might say tail or something like that. It has that, the utility of that shouldn't be overstated, because if you run vim, it doesn't tell you what you're running in vim. And if you run vim 20 times, it's not that interesting. But it's something more. With tmux, I don't think I ran into a limit on the number of windows. There may be one, but I got tired at 100 and didn't script it. Modern Screen limits you to 100. A few years ago, the limit was 40, and I actually found that annoying and built my own version, hacked to allow more, because we were using it on a Bastion host to get in behind a firewall with lots of shared screens, and 40 actually was constraining. So I think 100 is probably more reasonable. Screen supports multiple panes in the same. I guess they're a weird thing. It supports splitting. tmux has better support for multiple panes. I'll just say it that way. And it comes with a status bar on by default. A lot of people just have a screen RC they carry around for years, so they have a status bar they like. But with tmux, even those who don't bother get one, and it is easier to configure. I happen to be a faithful member of the true religion of VI. So for me, having VI key bindings for commands in tmux is a plus, but you can switch to Emacs key bindings. Screen only has Emacs key bindings. tmux has a cool feature where you can jump to another window, not just by the title of the window or the number, but doing a search for the text in the window. And I just learned about that a few weeks ago. It's pretty cool. I don't think that I would use it a ton for a long-running session, but if you know that you haven't labeled your windows and you want to jump back to something you just saw, you don't remember where it was, it's meta F to do a search for that, which is kind of neat. And another minor thing, but I think it helps, in Screen, Control A, 0 is going to take you to screen 0, 9 will take you to screen 9, but that's as high as it goes. And I very often have more than 10 windows. tmux adds A through Z for 20 through 36, or 20, is that right? No, 10 through 36. And so that covers a much wider range of windows without you necessarily having to label them. tmux allows you to individually detach and reattach windows between sessions, which Screen does not. And tmux has, I shouldn't just say easier follow the leader, it has it at all. In Screen, when you are sharing a session, if one person leaves and goes to look at another window, nobody else has any clue about that. And the way to develop the feature called follow the leader is to run screen within a screen, and everyone joins the outer screen, and the person driving uses the inner screen. But it's a bit of a pain to set up, hurts your brain a little bit, keeping track of the meta keys. And tmux has that just built in. tmux is under active development, which is nice. I didn't even bother to put this inflammatory statement in here, but it's under the BSD license, which is probably the real reason it was developed in the first place, as opposed to Screen, which is under the GPL. And I think tmux will probably be around longer and keep going. So if you're happy using either one, tmux is probably the one worth investing more in the long run. tmux has a neat feature called synchronized panes that will let you, within a single window, if you've broken it into multiple panes, once you turn on synchronized panes, anything you type is typed in all of the panes at the same time. And if you want to, I don't know, I'm not sure when I'll use this, honestly, but I have a friend who wrote a Perl program that did exactly that with SSH, and so apparently it is useful sometimes. If you want to type the same thing in 5 different servers at the same time, that's the easiest way to do it. Let's take a look just because it's fun. So, tmux, multiple panes, and then it was set window synchronize panes, I think. And there you go. So I won't claim that's essential, but follow the leader is kind of neat. I'm not sure how easy that'll be to demo on here, but let's try it. Okay, so lock client. So normally, if I go, or maybe it's on, oh, I think I actually already had it on here, but this has got lock client on by default. So when I switch to window 1, both of these clients switches to window 1. Whereas with screen, I've got this, but then I create a new window, and this other one doesn't know. I have to manually switch over to it, and the only way to do it is screen within a screen. So, I believe it's :set W lock client off. I thought it was off. Either it's different on this machine, or I already had it changed, but. Because it is useful to have them separate. I like Screen's way of doing it, but if you have someone in there who's not very familiar with Screen, they get lost easily, so locking the client is nice. I actually like tmux's history, copying and browsing. How badly am I in your way seeing this? Is this all right? Sorry. I like it better than Screen's. However, this could be my own cluelessness or whatever, but between tmux 1.5 and 1.6, Debian versus Fedora, and I've read on Mac OS X, the tmux scrollback and history browsing is broken in different weird ways. And so it's hard to be quite as excited about that, but when it works, it's nice. So Control-B, left square bracket, is the way to get into scrollback, or Control-B, just page up, will go into scrollback and go up a page. It has VI key bindings to move and search, as does Screen, and copy and paste, and it keeps a history of your copy and paste buffers, which is nice. There's a neat little consistency thing in tmux. You can use Q to get out of the scrollback navigation and out of dialogues, and it really works. In Screen to this day, I still am not quite sure. Is it enter to get out or space a couple of times? I don't know. One difference I noted almost immediately is in Screen, whatever current working directory you were in when you started the Screen session, that's where every new Screen window is going to start. And either I like that or I got used to it and now I like it. It feels normal because I start in whatever directory I want them all to be in, and then from then on, that's where they are. tmux is different. It uses the current working directory of whatever window you start the new window from. So when let's get rid of one of those guys. So if I cd to user bin and start a new window with Control-B-C, I am still in user bin. But I started here, and if I were in Screen and started, let's see, cd user bin, and then start a new window, I'm still in home. So that's just a difference. Does anyone know if that's a customizable option in tmux? I haven't ever been able to find it. So it is disableable, you think?
Unless they turn it on by default.
Everything seems to be configurable, so I'm assuming it's changeable. But I've just been rolling with it and being used to it for a while to see how I like it. This will tell you a little bit about my point of view in the talk. I've been using Screen for about 7 years and tmux for about 10 months. And Screen was really, really embedded into my muscle memory. So using tmux was hard. But the way I went about it was I just said, I want to learn this. it isn't on any of the servers I work on, so I will run it on my desktop all the time and never run screen on my desktop. And so for the last 10 months, that's what I've done. And I used all the default key bindings, haven't remapped anything, and that was a good way for me, anyway, to make the switch and force myself to get to know it. But having said that, tmux has a lot of great features, and there's a fair number of them that I used once or twice, and I can't remember them. And so it definitely is worth going back to look at the man page every once in a while to see what you've forgotten. In light of my biases, these are the things I think that are wrong with tmux. They're never likely to change, so there's no point in getting too worked up about them. But the default key binding of Control-B is terrible. Control-A is wonderful. It is a one-handed operation, very close, very comfortable, especially if you use caps lock as your control key, which is correct. As of 1975, that is the correct place. And Control-A is just magically delicious for that. It was silly to change it, but the Emacs fans of the world really don't like it. Now, I use Emacs key bindings in my shell, so I'm affected by the Control-A problem as much as anyone. I just got used to it, and I think it's harmless to type Control-A and see that nothing happened, and your brain says, I'm in screen, and then hit A to do it. With Control-B, it interferes with page back in VI and less, and it is much more of a pain to stretch your fingers and type Control-B. I'm a big keyboardist, so when I bellyache about this, that's why. Control-A to go to your most recent screen, to me, is much better than Control-BL, which is a two-handed operation, but I do it all the time. I do it all the time when I'm on the phone. Control-A, Control-A. I mean, it's funny, but anyway, it's never going to change, and I'm not going to rebind the keys because I want to know how the defaults work. Otherwise, I get in shared tmux sessions with people, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I suffer like a martyr. Poor me. Does anyone know if Control-A, capital F for fit in screen exists in tmux? I have not found it. Sorry. When you're in a shared screen with other people, and you have a large terminal window, and they have a cute little tiny one, and you were the one who started the session with your big window, they can't see most of what's going on. So Screen has this really nice function called fit, Control-A, capital F, and it sizes the window to the person typing it. So you have the person with the smallest terminal size it to them. In tmux, I just haven't found that. So it's probably there. Probably just have missed it. There's also what to me feel like some pointless command changes. I don't know why tmux did them differently. They worked perfectly fine the way they were, but it's just something new to learn that seems dumb. And there you go. Show buffers, retitle window. I mean, those are things I do all the time. Kill a window. tmux does introduce the difference between killing a window and a pane, so they did need a new key, a new binding for that. And they took ampersand for window and X for pane. Invocation options are different. That's probably for the best, I guess. But the screen ones were a little faster to type. See. When I was learning tmux, one of the ways that I convinced myself it was worth the pain of typing Control-B is to run tmux locally on my machine, and in each window shell into a different server, which was each running screen. So running screen within tmux, it was not at all hard for me to keep my bearings straight. My coworker Josh over there, who's almost asleep, sorry, our coworker Kyle has no problem keeping screen within a screen straight with Control-A as the same key binding for both, but I'm not as smart as him, so. In both of them, the scrollback history is absurdly small. tmux isn't quite as absurd, but Debian and Red Hat both changed the default to 1,000 in screen, which is still ridiculous. So do yourself a favor. You probably have the memory to spare. Set it to 100,000 or so, so that your scrollback buffer actually has in it that really important configuration file that you accidentally deleted and need to get back. This is my my silly, this is not a VI versus Emacs war, unfortunately. It would have been more fun, but I like both Screen and tmux, actually. And for the foreseeable future, I mean, I would say at least the next 5 years, Screen is going to still be ubiquitous and on every server. And it's worth knowing just for that. And there's a lot of people who've used Screen for years. So I think the best thing to do at this point is to learn them both. Maybe in 5 years, it'll be simpler to say, yeah, Screen was the old thing, tmux is the new thing. But because working together in them is so useful, I don't think it's worth excluding yourself. Tmux, for a little while, was kind of a pain to get a hold of unless you wanted to build it from source. But it is now in the repositories by default for Debian, Ubuntu. It's in EPEL for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5 and 6 and CentOS and all that. Fedora, FreeBSD, and it comes by default with OpenBSD, which has kind of become its sponsor. And now, let us do the unwise thing where we all shell into the same machine if you feel like it. Go ahead. That's the user, the host, and the password. And if you can, open up both a Screen and a tmux session side by side in separate SSH sessions. I'll leave this up for a sec before I switch over there so you can log in. Everybody got it who wants to? You all in? I don't see anyone else. Let's see. Who all do we have in here? Am I already in it? I'm not in it. Oh, there we go. Look at how pretty it is when tmux is trying to show you that somebody's screen is bigger than the others. In Screen, it's not quite as graphically depicted. Yes. That's a comment. That's not a valid shell command. Come on. So, somebody fire off another couple of windows, will you? Control B, C. Come on. There you go. And then somebody run Vim. There you go. So you can see the title of the window changing automatically, which is kind of nice. You get a star by the one that you're currently on. You get a minus by the one that you used to be on. So if you do Control BL, that's where you'll end up. This is the session number for if you have multiple sessions on in the same account. You'll see the number there. This is the not very descriptive host name of this cloud instance I spun up, and date and time. Whoa. There, just to be very universal about it, I'll run Emacs even though I don't like it. Okay. I thought it would be kind of fun if we did. Wait a minute. Is it? I can't remember what it's called. Synchronized panes. That was it. I think it does. Yeah. Let's try. Yeah, it does. Okay. So, yes, Ho, ho, ho. And the fun thing, of course, would come if we SSH'd somewhere else. But I guess it would be better if we did ZWS panes off. How do you go to the previous pane? I can't remember all of a sudden. Anyone know? No? No, it's not the... I can't remember. Did I mention there are a lot of things in tmux I've done once and can't remember how to do? Anyway, so that's follow panes. Let's just compare. I will log back into that. Was it demo? Let's try a screen session now. How many do we have in here? Nobody, just me. Okay. You're in there? In the screen session? What did I start a new one? Maybe. Why are we not seeing all of the other users?
Because nobody can figure out how to detach tmux.
I guess that's possible. Normally, do this. Demo at. This is the part where the live demo fails, by the way. This whole part here. All right, so got a different window. Use screen-x and oops. Okay, now you can see there are multiple people in there. We're probably stepping all over each other too much for that to be useful.
It's entertaining.
I hope so. Yeah, you kind of pound on the keyboard and then you just run lint and it takes care of it. You know, it's good. All right. So a couple other things I wanted to bring up. The Ubuntu project started something called Biobu, which originally was just a bunch of configuration tweaks to screen that made it fancy in a way that they liked. I didn't find it compelling, but some people really like it. And they recently switched and, well, I think in the previous version they also started supporting tmux, and they've recently switched and made tmux their default terminal multiplexer. So that's if you use either one a lot and you don't already like them, you might want to check that out. It might have some things you like. And then there's one called wmux, which has some interesting multi-user enhancements for tmux for pair programming specifically. I don't think that it's very widely used yet. There's a what's it called? Homebrew package for Mac OS X. Is that the right name for it? And then there's source. There's nothing for Linux yet. So if you want to try it out, though, it might be worth doing. I haven't tried this yet. If any of you has, I'd like to hear. But my understanding is that tmux uses the server uses a socket so that you can use a tmux client to attach to a remote tmux server over an SSH tunnel. And if that's the case, that would make using it in a multi-user scenario quite a bit nicer because you don't have to give shell access to someone for them to be on the same system. They'll effectively have the same access. I mean, it's not a security improvement. It's just a convenience to be able to use that way. So that's all I've got for slides. Anybody have any questions?
How well can you do that? Can you do that?
I don't know. I haven't tried. Anyone know?
In
Cool. How often does it do it in screen? I don't do that. 60. Yeah.
As you rightly said, I said it, but I think the thing that you said was that essentially when I log in as somebody and try to share a screen with somebody else and start as another user, I don't have to go and mod my sudo TTY so that I have access to it so that I can follow their screen with some of the users. Did that make any sense at all? No.
Kind of. Say it. Say.
So, for instance,
I think I missed the premise at the beginning. Were you talking about not shelling into their account?
So, for instance, with coworkers, they will log into some service themselves and say, I've started a screen, come see me. And I will log into that same server as myself, and then have to sudo over there and try starting a screen and have it complain to me that I don't have a real TTY. So I have to go back to root and chmod their TTY so that I have access to it and can then start the screen as myself and have permissions to see their screen socket. And it's always a pain in the and maybe tmux makes that easier because of the socket thing that we have.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. The way I usually do multiple logins to the same screen session is I give people SSH access to that account. It's the best way to keep, to not have to, nobody has to have root or mess with a TTY or whatever. But, it is a bit of a pain if you don't already have their SSH public key or something, so.
My primary complaint with screen is with the windowing. I typically just create a bunch of screen windows, tail a bunch of logs, and then I split the screen so I can see all the logs at the same time. If I disconnect and reconnect, all that splitting's gone. I have to re-split my windows again. Can I get back to that same split pane view in tmux? Disconnecting.
Yeah, the panes are an inherent part of the window in tmux. So I think by design it fixes the problem.
It still looks like you left it.
Yeah, with screen, you really have to run screen within a screen to do that. So.
You can resize some windows and be height 0 or width 0, and you can set something. Sometimes you can see it. Is that true?
In tmux?
Yeah.
Well, in both tmux and screen, I've had that happen. Is there a way in tmux to show the list of panes in the current window, like you can show windows? I would suspect that would be the way to get out of it nicely. But I mean, in screen, you just have to cycle through them and close them. So.
My server is on Ubuntu 10.04 and it had tmux, so
did it?
It's been available for a while.
Yeah, I started using it on Ubuntu probably 11.04, I'm thinking, and I'm using it on Fedora now, and the history stuff is different. It's very different. So I don't really know why. I've got to look into it, and I don't use Mac OS 10, but I read that people found lots of problems with that too. So, someone else?
So my habit is to use screen and have an IRC client windows split up on the top and do all of my other stuff here because people will start seeing me in IRC and then get mad when I haven't responded for 50 minutes. It's just my habit because I don't actually have it in front of me. But if the pane is a visible part of the single window in tmux, then apparently I can do something like that. So it's one statically looking at things here and then switch back and forth for different windows and applications.
I don't think you can, no, because the pane is part of the window. I could be wrong again. I keep finding new things in tmux, so I'm hesitant to say no, but I don't know how anyway. You could always run tmux inside screen. It's just what I wanted to hear. Exactly. That's exactly right. I think because in tmux you can detach a window Well, that still won't help you because the panes are part of the window. So yeah, it may just be a limitation of it. So I know it's not perfect. It's crazy. Anyone else? You guys probably know more about this than I do. There's a lot to learn. So. Yeah.
I know that in Screen you can't really save sessions, but you can at least write a script to open up a certain windows and the window where you want to go to. Is it possible to save sessions in tmux?
Not that I've seen, no. But again, it could be there. Another thing I should bring up that is good about both Screen and tmux is if you want a cheap demonizer, they're for some ad hoc thing that you don't plan to use forever. They're kind of nice for that. You can set them to start up a bunch of commands at boot and tail logs and whatever, and then go in and see what they're doing. But you never actually have to be there when they start. So that's kind of nice. Both of them have ways to keep the window around after the command has finished running also, which is useful if you auto-started something and didn't start it from a shell yourself.
Can you fire off some tmux sessions without them coming up? Start them off and disconnect them?
I believe so. I do it in Screen all the time. I don't know how in tmux, but what's the command? Do you know?
It might just be new, and that's not a parameter that I'm actually attached to it.
Okay.
Everything's scriptable.
Because it treats the client and server commands differently. I would think you could just send it the server-side command. So, yeah.
So kind of actually a really esoteric question. When you debug a working program in Perl, you can't automatically pop open your screen sessions because there's no way to find out what your bid is. The terminal you just opened, but you can't with the external. So if you want to debug working, you have to open up an external window and do it that way. Is there a way to programmatically find out the PID of the window you just opened? From program?
And by window, you mean you actually want to know the PID of Xterm itself.
But you want to find out the PID of the screen window you just opened, or the tmux window you just opened from the program.
What do you want to do with the PID?
That's how you tell Perl to run the process of the terminal, the TTY.
Oh.
So when you're working out the process, if you don't dump the screen from your debugger to that TTY, you'll get your one screen all jumbled up with all of the port processes.
I don't know. I'm probably, there's probably something wrong with this, but I would try to find the parent PID of the shell that I'm in. It doesn't work?
Well, it's unreliable.
You don't have a computer. You want to come drive? Show us.
I can't do anything around with that. It takes a little bit of setup from the file.
Yeah, I don't know. My guess would be that if it's that it's probably possible in tmux because its client-server model is better. Probably in Screen it's because things are a little conflated, and you're probably getting the PID of the Screen daemon or something. I don't know. You were correct, though. That is fairly esoteric. Good job. Anyone else? I want to see you guys hack something. You know what you're doing with tmux.
Same thing with another thing that you mentioned, detaching windows between sessions.
Yeah.
So you can do that. That's nice if I have one running, say, client, my client, and I'm running something, and I'm in a different project that's under the section. I want to monitor that and have to jump in between. And then also, since you have a list of all your sessions, you can pull up the list of the sessions within a session area and switch between them instead of having a disconnect. I don't know if you can do that in Screen.
But to switch to a totally different session, you have to detach and reattach. Yeah. I keep mentioning screen inside screen, and people laugh every time. But I know. Yeah.
So I end up doing developments that have a different session project that might be underneath and switch to the big project, switch sessions without detaching at all. You know?
Right. It's also good for, it's not uncommon to start some long-running command in a place you didn't mean to, and screen helps you get over the hump where you can't even detach, and you can live around it, but tmux really makes it more manageable. What's the default key binding for detaching a window from the session that it's in? It doesn't have a binding? Okay. Yeah, I thought I would use it all the time, and I didn't, so I don't even remember how to do it. But yeah. Well, tmux has a really good man page, and there's a lot in there. Probably the hardest thing is just learning some of the terminology. We always called screen within a screen follow the leader, and not everyone calls it that. And you know, in tmux, it took me a while to find it because lock is an overused word. I didn't think of that, but lock client. But once you know it, it's fine. So, anyone else? I guess I will wrap up by saying talking about this stuff is actually kind of boring, and if you're at all like me, you will hear about it a lot, but the only thing that actually works is to use it and have stuff break and try to remember what was going on and keep trying, keep typing. I want to say I'm really impressed by tmux, even though I'd been using Screen for so long, and like I described, I really think tmux's key bindings by default are not good in a bunch of important cases. But it's good enough that it kept me using it. It clearly has a very nice path forward to the future. And I really have run into problems with Screen bloat when I had 60-something windows and lots of scrollback buffer. And tmux being more efficient just, you know, is nicer for cases like that. So if you had to teach someone something new from the start, I think tmux would be the way to go. And I don't know, maybe someone will do a project like Biobu that'll rebind everything to be very close to Screen. I suppose that would be helpful. So.